नमस्कार। आज 13 जुलाई, जो कि कश्मीर के इतिहास में भट्ट दिवस के नाम से जाना जाता है। भट्ट से मतलब कि जिस दिन कश्मीरी पंडित, जो अपने आप को भट्ट कहते हैं और कश्मीरी प्रोनाउंसिएशन जिसका बट है, तो बट दिवस है। बट उस दिन लूटे गए थे। उनके साथ एक जिसको हम, अगर हम जेनोसाइड स्टडीज के हिसाब से देखेंगे, तो एक जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट हुआ। इससे पहले मुगलों के जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट हुआ था। और उससे पहले पठानों का, नहीं, इससे पहले पठानों का हुआ था। उससे पहले मुगलों का हुआ था। मुगलों से पहले शम्स अराकी का हुआ था। उससे पहले अली शाह और अली शाह के रेन में हुआ था, जो और सिकंदर बुतसिकन से जो शुरू होता है। तो ये जो था, ये हम अगर इसको देखेंगे तो ये फिफ्थ जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट था। हम कश्मीर में जो कश्मीरी बट्टों के साथ जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट हुआ, वो एक वेव जेनोसाइड जिसे हम कहेंगे, वो वेव्स में हुआ। ये फिफ्थ वेव ऑफ जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट थी, जो बाद में 1947 में जो ट्राइबल रेड के साथ सिक्स्थ वेव आई, और फिर 1990 में सेवंथ वेव आई। सेवन वेव्स ऑफ जेनोसाइड हैं, जिनको जो हमने सफर की हैं कश्मीरी पंडित्स ने। तो इस वेव, ये जो फिफ्थ वेव है, ये कई दृष्टियों से बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण वेव है। तो इसकी जो बेसिक जो चीजें थी कि जो बेसिक एलिमेंट्स इसके थे कि वो क्यों हुई, कि अंग्रेज सरकार, ब्रिटिश सरकार जो थी, वो महाराजा हरी सिंह से नाराज थी। क्योंकि महाराजा हरी सिंह ने एक तो राउंड टेबल कॉन्फ्रेंस में अपनी देशभक्ति का सबूत दिया था। बहुत स्टॉन्चली पेट्रियाटिक उन्होंने स्टैंड लिया था वहां पर। और गिलगित के एरिया को ब्रिटिशर्स कह रहे थे कि वो उन्हें दे दिया जाए, लेकिन महाराजा नहीं मान रहे थे। तो इसलिए ब्रिटिश सरकार वांटेड टू कट हिम टू साइज। सो वो एक हिसाब से बहुत ही वल्नरेबल किंग थे। वो एक हिंदू किंग थे, जो कि मुस्लिम मेजोरिटी को रूल कर रहे थे। तो उनके खिलाफ रिबेलियन खड़ा करना बहुत कोई मुश्किल नहीं था। और यहाँ जो कश्मीरी पंडित कम्युनिटी थी, वो भी वल्नरेबल कम्युनिटी थी। उसके पास एक हिस्टोरिकल वल्नरेबिलिटी थी, जो इससे पहले के चार जेनोसाइडल वेव्स में उनको सोशली, कम्युनिटी वाइज और डेमोग्राफी वाइज बहुत थिनिंग हो गई थी। बहुत ही कम संख्या में वो रह गए थे। क्योंकि इससे पहले वो चार जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट्स झेल चुके थे। तो यहाँ पर कश्मीरी पंडितों का इस्तेमाल किया गया महाराजा के खिलाफ। किस तरह से कश्मीरी पंडितों पर असॉल्ट हुआ, जगह जगह पर असॉल्ट हुआ। और अब्दुल कदीर जो था, कहते हैं कि उसकी, वो कहाँ का था, कि कुछ कहते हैं कि स्वात का था, कुछ कहते हैं कि पेशावर का था, लेकिन उसके ओरिजिन्स के बारे में कुछ मालूम नहीं है। और अंग्रेज अफसर जो मेजर भट्ट था, मेजर भट्ट के अर्दली के कुक के रूप में आया था, और उसने बेसिकली वहां महाराजा के खिलाफ बगावत की शुरुआत की थी। और यहां तक कहा था कि महल की ओर इशारा, महाराजा के महल की ओर इशारा करते हुए कहा था कि हमारे पास इसको गिराने के लिए मशीन गन नहीं है, लेकिन हमारे पास पत्थर और ईंटें पर्याप्त मात्रा। तो पत्थर और ईंटों से जंग करने का, कश्मीर में रिबेलियन के लिए पत्थरबाजी का इस्तेमाल करने की प्रेरणा भी कश्मीर के इतिहास में, यानी पत्थरबाजी वो हाल के वर्षों में 1990 के बाद ही शुरू नहीं हुई थी। पत्थरबाजी को अपने आप को विक्टिम बना करके, हमारे पास हथियार नहीं है, लेकिन ये गवर्नमेंट कितनी अट्रोशियस है, कितनी अट्रोसिटीज करती है, कितनी क्रूअल गवर्नमेंट है, इसको दिखाने के लिए पत्थरों के इस्तेमाल के लिए अब्दुल कदीर की ही प्रेरणा काम कर रही है। तो क्या हुआ कि कई जगहों पर ये कई जगहों पर फसाद हुआ, और जिसमें गोलीबारी हुई। महाराजा की आर्मी बचाव के लिए आई, तो वहां पर रिबेलियन को दबाने के लिए तो 22 मुसलमान उसमें मारे गए, और उन 22 मुसलमानों का मारा जाना ये इतिहास की, कश्मीर के इतिहास की सबसे बड़ी घटना बना दी गई। और उस दिन जो कश्मीरी पंडित मारे गए थे, जिन कश्मीरी पंडितों के साथ जो लूट हुआ, बिकॉज ऑफ दियर, जिसे जिसे कि जेनोसाइड कन्वेंशन में कहा जाता है कि बिकॉज ऑफ देयर बिलोंगिंग टू ए स्पेसिफिक ग्रुप, यानी जो प्रोटेक्टेड ग्रुप्स हैं, नेशनल, इथनिक, रिलीजियस और रेशियल, जो चार ग्रुप्स हैं, इन इथनिक और रिलीजियस ग्रुप कश्मीरी पंडित थे, बेसिकली रिलीजियस ग्रुप भी था। अगर आज के हिसाब से देखा जाए, मॉडर्न जेनोसाइड कन्वेंशन के हिसाब से देखा जाए, तो दे वर असॉल्टेड बिकॉज ऑफ देयर बिलोंगिंग टू ए रिलीजियस, बिकॉज दे बिलोंग टू ए रिलीजियस ग्रुप। तो और ये बहुत ऑर्गेनाइज था। इससे पहले कनिकूट विलेज में फरवरी में लगभग 8-9 एक पूरी फैमिली कश्मीरी पंडितों की मार दी गई थी, जो कि एडजेसेंट विलेज के लोगों ने मारी गई थी, उनको बाद में सजा भी हुई। तो ये बातें जो थी, ये कश्मीरी पंडित कम्युनिटी के अगेंस्ट आज के युग में ऑर्गेनाइज्ड जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट की, जो प्लान्ड ऑर्गेनाइज्ड जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट, ये 13 जुलाई की घटना उसका रिप्रेजेंटेशन है। तो क्या हुआ, इसको फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल का नाम तब दिया गया, और ये फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल 1990 की नहीं है, ये फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल का नाम दिया गया कि ये ब्रिटिश सरकार की, जब भारत में ब्रिटिश सरकार के खिलाफ फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल चल रहा था, तो कश्मीर में भी फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल चल रहा था, लेकिन वो हिंदू किंग, डोगरा किंग के अगेंस्ट था, कि वो बहुत टिरानिकल रूलर था, और ये टिरानिकल रूलर था, ये उसको, उसके बारे में ये एक भ्रम फैलाया गया। जबकि महाराजा हरि सिंह के बारे में जो बातें हमने अपने पूर्वजों से सुनी है, कि मेरा परिवार अक्सर कम्युनिस्ट लीनिंग्स का रहा है, तो कश्मीर में जो ट्रेड यूनियनिज्म चला था, और ट्रेड यूनियनिस्ट महाराजा के जमाने में भी थे, और एक ट्रेड यूनियनिस्ट जो हमारे मोहल्ले में रहते थे, मोहल्ला डलसन यार अब्बास श्रीनगर, उनका नाम था अब्दुल अहद चंग, अहद चंग कहते थे उनको। उनकी जो धर्म पत्नी थी वो राहत बेगम, उनको हम राहत मोमानी कहते थे। तो अहद चंग के बारे में हमने बहुत सारी स्टोरी सुनी थी। रेशम खाना कश्मीर में जो सिल्क फैक्ट्री थी, उसके एम्प्लॉइज को जो जब प्रॉब्लम हुई थी, तनख्वाह लेने में प्रॉब्लम हो रही थी, तो कोई अधिकारी महाराजा तक बात नहीं पहुंचने दे रहा था, तो अहद चंग महाराजा के महल में घुस गए और खिड़की के रास्ते से चढ़ गए। जब वो महाराजा की खिड़की से झांके अहद चंद, तो बॉडी गार्ड्स ने गन तान दी, तो महाराजा ने कहा रुको, ये कोई बहुत परेशान आदमी है, इसलिए ये यहाँ है, इसको पता था कि मुझे गोली पड़ेगी यहाँ पर, लेकिन ये फिर भी आया, इसको कुछ ना कुछ तो बात होगी। तो फिर महाराजा ने उससे पूछा, उसने कहा कि सिल्क फैक्ट्री में एम्प्लॉइज की प्रॉब्लम है, तो महाराजा ने कहा ठीक है, मैं एड्रेस करूंगा। उसको इज्जत से अंदर लाए, खिड़की के रास्ते अंदर लाया, और बाहर निकाला, और बाहर बाहर जाने का बड़ी इज्जत से कहा। तो ये महाराजा की पर्सनैलिटी के बारे में बात कही। ये जो हम ऑथेंटिक, हमारे मोहल्ले में अक्सर ये बात चलती, तो महाराजा के बारे में ये भ्रम फैलाया जा रहा था। तो इसके बाद महाराजगंज, इस 13 जो ये जुलाई था, महाराजगंज, सफा कदल, आली कदल, इन सारे एरियाज में कश्मीरी पंडितों की प्रॉपर्टीज, दुकानों को लूटा गया। वो कश्मीरी पंडित बहुत अच्छे व्यापारी थे, तो कुछ जो टेस्टिमनीज हैं उस दौर की, कि जब कुछ अंग्रेजों ने भी लिखी है कि जब हम उस बाजार से, उस एरिया से गुजर रहे थे, तो प्रॉपर्टी सड़कों पर बिखरी पड़ी थी, व्यापारियों के बही खाते बिखरे पड़े थे, और ये जो कहते हैं कि वेसार नाग में तो कश्मीरी पंडितों के साथ, उनकी महिलाओं के साथ जो बात हुई, उसका रिकॉर्ड ही मिटा दिया गया है। और इसके बदले में कश्मीरी मुसलमानों को क्या अचीवमेंट ये हुई कि गोली से 22 आदमी मारे गए, जो कि रिबेलियन कर रहे थे सरकार के खिलाफ। कोई भी सरकार ऐसे ही डील करेगी जब आप अ, उसके खिलाफ रिबेलियन करेंगे। तो जब हालात काबू से बाहर हो गए तो गोलियां चलानी पड़ गई और 22 आदमी मारे गए। तो 22 आदमी की मौत, 22 आदमी की जो मौत थी वो क्या बना दी गई, शहीदों की एक कहानी उसके पीछे बना दी गई। और इस 13 जुलाई को योम शोहदा कहा गया, शहीदों का मैचेस डे कहा गया। और आज भी कश्मीर की जो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज हैं वो योम शोहदा मना रही हैं। हालांकि सरकार ने, भारत सरकार जो वर्तमान भारत सरकार है, उसने 2019 दिसंबर में ही इस दिन को ऑफिशियली मैटियर्स डे की जो रिकॉग्निशन थी इसकी वो खत्म कर दी कि ऑफिशियली नहीं मनाया जाएगा। और बात ये देखने की है कि ऑफिशियली इस दिन को तब तक मनाया जाता रहा, मैटियर्स डे। और पिछली सरकारों ने क्या किया कि उन्होंने इस विक्टिमहुड को हर साल, उसकी विक्टिमहुड की जो रिमेम्बरेंस थी, उसकी जो याददाश्त थी, इसको हर साल स्थापित करने के लिए और उसको कश्मीरी मुसलमानों के मन में स्थापित करने के लिए हर साल इसको मैटर्स डे के रूप में मनाने की इजाजत दी। ये एक ये एक ऐसी बात है कि परपेट्रेटर कम्युनिटी को विक्टिम नैरेटिव, विक्टिम कवर देने के लिए सरकारों ने बहुत साथ दिया। और ये अचीवमेंट जो है कि परपेट्रेटर लगातार विक्टिम होता चला जा रहा है और जो विक्टिम है उसकी हिस्ट्री को, उसके विक्टिमहुड को डिनाई किया जा रहा है। तो ये जो 13 जुलाई से जो ये कश्मीरी मुस्लिम्स को एक नैरेटिव मिला है, ये बहुत ही ब्रिलियंटली, मैं इसको उनकी बहुत बड़ी अचीवमेंट और ब्रिलियंस मानता हूं कि उन्होंने इसको इतने बरसों तक बनाए रखा और अभी भी मना रहे हैं। क्या हुआ ये और कैसे मना रहे हैं ये, अगर आज वो मना रहे हैं तो ये सरकारी आदेश के खिलाफ है कि नहीं, सरकार जो है भारत की सरकार वो हमको हमारी राइट्स को, हमारी इच्छाओं और आकांक्षाओं को डिनाई कर। तो इस दिन जो कश्मीरी मुस्लिम्स के विक्टिमहुड का, उनके मैटिडम का, उनकी शहादत का जो नैरेटिव है, उसने केवल उस समय जो विचारनाग और पूरे कश्मीर में, पूरे श्रीनगर के आसपास के इलाकों में जो कश्मीरी पंडितों के साथ, कश्मीरी भट्टों के साथ हुआ, न केवल उसका डिनाइल किया बल्कि पिछली जो 4 वेव्स थी जेनोसाइड की, उनका भी डिनाइल किया कि नहीं, विक्टिम तो असल में हम हैं, हमने किसी को विक्टिम नहीं बनाया। तो आप देख सकते हैं कि जो ये यौम शहदा का नैरेटिव है, ये कश्मीरी मुस्लिम्स की अचीवमेंट इसलिए है कि वो पिछले सारे जो उन्होंने जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट्स किए हैं उसकी डिनायल है। आप देख सकते हैं, आप समझ सकते हैं कि किस तरह से ये डिनायल अभी पूरे इंडिया में, पूरे इंडिया के इंटेलिजेंशिया तक में इम्बाइब हुआ है। और इसको इस दिन को सरकारी तौर पर योम शोहदा के रूप में मान्यता न दिए जाने के कारण ये वर्तमान सरकार ने कितना बड़ा कदम उठाया है। आप वर्तमान सरकार की अपोजिशन कर सकते हैं, विरोध कर सकते हैं, हर स्तर पर कर सकते हैं, लेकिन ये इसके पीछे एक बहुत बड़ी समझ काम करती है कि उन्होंने ये फॉल्स नैरेटिव जो है कि शहीद वो हैं, विक्टिम वो हैं, इस नैरेटिव को ऑफिशियली खत्म करने की दिशा में एक कदम उठाया गया है। और इससे हम हमारे जेनोसाइड के नैरेटिव को स्थापित करने, उसको बनाने के लिए रास्ता साफ हो जाता है। तो हमने अपने नैरेटिव को ऐसी स्थिति में फ्रॉम जेनोसाइडल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, जो कि जेनोसाइड हमारे साथ जो हुआ है 7 जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट्स में है, ये एक वेव जेनोसाइड है। यजदी जो है इराक के, उनका भी वेव्स में जेनोसाइड हुआ है। अगर आप ज्विश हिस्ट्री को देखेंगे तो उनका भी वेव्स में जेनोसाइड हुआ है। पहले एक इजिप्ट में हुआ है, इजिप्ट में स्लेवरी में उनको रखा गया, जिसके वो पास ओवर सेरेमनी जो वो करते हैं, पास ओवर में सॉन्ग्स गाते हैं अपने के नेक्स्ट ईयर इन जेरूसलम वाला सॉन्ग गाते हैं। तो जेनोसाइड की प्रोसेस ही है कि ये सिंगल असॉल्ट में नहीं होता है। तो बटलूट जेनोसाइडल वेव है। ये बटलूट, अगर ये सिर्फ लूटे नहीं गए, ये एक जेनोसाइडल वेव है जिसके पीछे 4 जेनोसाइडल वेव्स काम करती हैं, जिन 4 जेनोसाइडल वेव्स ने कश्मीरी बट्टों को, कश्मीरी पंडित्स को की संख्या को कम करते करते एक्सट्रीमली वल्नरेबल कंडीशन में 1931 में पहुंचा दिया, जिससे कि अंग्रेजों ने भी उनका इस्तेमाल किया ताकि वो वहां के लोकल हिंदू किंग को कट टू साइज कर सके। तो ये जो नैरेटिव्स हैं जो हमको तैयार करने हैं, हमारी नौजवान पीढ़ी जो है वो हमारे साथ है। तो इस नौजवान पीढ़ी के ऊपर एक बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि एक तो वो इस, जिसे भट्टलूट कहते हैं, विच एक्चुअली इज द 5th जेनोसाइडल वेव, आप इसको जो भी नाम दें, बट लूट सिर्फ लूट तक सीमित रहता है। लेकिन लूट क्यों? क्या उस दौर में कोई किलिंग्स भी हुई थी? किलिंग्स भी हुई थी, और उनका रिकॉर्ड कहां पर है? उनका रिकॉर्ड खत्म कर दिया गया, उनके रिकॉर्ड को दबाया गया। और ये समझने की जरूरत है कि यहां जो मैटियर्स डे है उसने केवल मुसलमान को मैटियर बनाया, जो परपेट्रेटर था उसको मैटियर बनाया, और पिछले सारे जो जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट्स थे, जिनके पास जिनके बारे में हमारे पास रिटन रिकॉर्ड है, उनको भी डिनाई किया। तो इस डिनायल से लड़ने में और अपने विक्टिमहुड को स्थापित करने में, जो कि कश्मीरी पंडित्स वास्तव में हैं, इसके लिए आजकल की नौजवान पीढ़ी के सामने एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है। तो आप लोग, मैं इस समय नौजवानों के बीच हूं, जो नौजवान मेरे साथ हैं इस समय, आप लोग इसको किस तरह से देखते हैं? हमें इस नैरेटिव को कैसे स्थापित करना है, और क्या हमारे पास इस नैरेटिव को बनाने की कोई मशीनरी है? यदि है तो कैसे? ये प्रश्न है मेरा आप लोगों से। एनीबडी कैन स्पीक, जो चाहता है कि बोले।
Thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Thank you so much. Mechubasan, I think post what we have heard from you, I mean, there is not much, I mean, left for us to narrate what happened on this day. But before answering your question, I think it's very important that we understand, because it's 13 July 2023 today. So what happened exactly 92 years back? And has anything changed since then, over time on ground in Kashmir, when we talk of the victims? And, why is this all actually black and red behind me? What are we commemorating? What is the significance of this day? And by the way, 13 July back in 1913 was a Monday. So what are we actually, protesting, discussing, debating, commemorating? I think these are all very, very important questions. And these questions need to be answered, and these answers need to be shared. And I think these answers need to be told and retold to our progeny, to our coming generation, to our, descendancy. And this, very importantly, all needs to be documented. And I mean, I know that Dilip ji has said it all, but just, I just wanted to share what I read, what I understood, what I heard, obviously from scholars, from leaders, from academia, from all the, respected figures of the community. Even, till the year 2019, this day was, I mean, very brazenly used to celebrate the genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. This was basically
Exactly.
if I'm not wrong.
Exactly. This
So
was indirect celebration.
it was a celebration of Kashmir. As you rightly termed it as the genocidal wave of one of the genocidal waves of the Kashmiri Pandits. And there is absolutely no doubt that it was a dark day, one of the dark days in the history of Kashmiri Pandits, or Hindus of Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, this day also saw acts of barbarism, atrocities, violence, murder, loot, and its पर दिलीप जी वोन की तिथ वारिया accounts च they never came in the fore. All those kinds of genocidal acts, crimes unleashed on Kashmiri Pandits. And I mean, it's also very important to understand not only just the Kashmiri Pandits were affected. When we talk, of the larger section of the Jammu and Kashmir civil society, it was, I mean, these were the days when the seeds of hatred were sown against the Dogra Hindu community also. And what, again, in the guise of, I think, anti-monarchy movement. So it was basically a Hindu phobia. It was basically, I think, back then Jammu and Kashmir in 1913 was a princely state, as I mean, Dr. Saab Dilipji, told us what happened. But Jammu and Kashmir was a princely state in British India, and it was not directly ruled by the British. So it had I mean, if you let's put ourselves in the shoes of the British and then see what better opportunity that you have a Muslim majority state, being ruled by a Hindu ruler. And this is the hotbed of conspiracy. You can do anything what you want. And that is yeah, sorry, Dilip, you want
just a moment. We have to establish that it is genocide. Genocide in what sense? That in a genocide there is a perpetrator, there is a rescuer. Rescuer is a very important aspect. Rescuers have been in Yazidi genocide. Rescuers have been in what Nazis did. Many and there are Yad Vashem that documents and the rescuers of Jews. They have at least 20,000 on the list, and there are many more to come. So on July 13th, there are many stories about rescuers also, because a rescuer establishes that there is a perpetrator. So that rescuer and perpetrator, these two are integral to every genocide. So that establishes the perpetrator, that there is a story of खानका मोहल्ला, जो कि हम सब जो कि हमें अक्सर बताई जाती है. वहां पर कौल फैमिली होती थी, रामनाथ, नीलकंठ और रघुनाथ कौल की फैमिली होती थी खानका मोहल्ला में. तो दूसरी वहां 5 फैमिलीज थी, दूसरी 2 फैमिलीज थी जो साथ साथ रहते थे, निरंजनाथ वली और दीनानाथ वली की फैमिली. तो उनके नेबर्स थे गुलाम मोहम्मद कालीन बाफ और अहद सक जो पानी दोज वाटर कैरियर्स. सो उन्होंने अपने नेबर्स से कहा कि आप ब्रर कहीं तो ब्रर कहीं में सूर्य और अहद सकन मुन्ना कि ब्रर कहीं में सूर्य तो ब्रांद शक्यू के गंदगी वंदगी तो दायर भरत रहो या लगे. So keep your doors and windows open, so that when the writers come, so they could be told that yim batut soilati mawasho toshu yaman. And in that way, so that was the plan of Sak. He was a rescuer, and they escaped. They hid themselves in the Birarkani, and but the other family, that Dinanath Wali and Niranjanath Wali, their family could not be saved, though Muslims also tried to save them also. So they could not be saved. They were looted, but they survived. But after this, ये जो कॉल फैमिली थी ये चिंकराल मोहल्ला में शिफ्ट हो गई. यानी कश्मीर में डेमोग्राफिकली पोलराइजेशन भी उस टाइम से शुरू हुआ, जो कि अनसेफ एरियाज जहां पर परपेट्रेटर का डोमिनेंस हुआ करता था, उस एरिया में पोलराइजेशन टोटल हो गई, स्क्वीज होना शुरू हो गया. उन एरियाज में कश्मीरी पंडित शिफ्ट करने लग गए जहां पर उनको खतरा कम लगता था, जहाँ कश्मीरी पंडित ज्यादा रहते थे, तो वो चिंकराल मोहल्ला की ओर शिफ्ट हो गए। तो यहाँ रेस्क्यूअर भी है। और हमारे मोहल्ले में जो बात थी, वहां हम 1990 तक हमारे मोहल्ले में बोटमैन, हम नदी के किनारे पर रहते थे, वी यूज्ड टू लिव ऑन रिवर बैंक, सो वी हैड टू बोटमैन, दे वर कजन्स, अजीज शेर था, अली शेर। तो 1931 में हमारी फैमिली के साथ अजीज शेर के प्रेडिसेसर्स ने मिसबिहेव किया था, मिसट्रीट किया था। हम 1990 तक उनकी नाव में नहीं बैठते थे जब नदी पार करनी। सो यू कैन सी हाउ मेमोरीज सर्वाइव। हमारे कश्मीरी बट होने के कारण अली शेर के नाव पर हम चढ़ जाते थे। हमारी फैमिली, हमको बताया जाता कि उसकी नाव में नहीं जाना, हालांकि बहुत देर से बताया गया कि कारण क्या था, 1931 कारण था। तो ये पोलराइजेशन 1931 से शुरू हुई है। सो वी हैव टू एनालाइज द नैरेटिव इन दैट सेंस कि इट वाज रियली जेनोसाइडल इन नेचर। सो यू मे प्लीज कंटिन्यू।
And Dilip ji, what I understood after, obviously I was not born in 1931, but what I understood after, I mean, listening to you people and everything, that actually 1931, it all boils down to three important, I mean, the key factors of what actually triggered 1931 throughout July. That means one is conspiracy. Obviously, the conspiracy angle of the British can't be ruled out. Number two, that hate speech, I would call it, by the Abdul Qadir that instigated the mobs.
That was also the part of the conspiracy.
Which was actually the part of the conspiracy. Exactly. And third one is, I mean, what was also happening simultaneously was the rise of Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah. So
Yeah.
if we actually break it down into three, because I want people, and especially the youngsters, to understand from the perspective of the Kashmiri Hindu genocide framework, when we are talking that it was, like you said, the hate speech of the Abdul Qadir, which was a part of the British conspiracy, as you rightly said it, and the rise of the Sheikh. All these three elements played a very key important role in triggering 13th of July. And सवाल ये कि हमारा इस अब्दुल कादिर ओस योस में कोशर शायद, I think he was not.
No.
And he was,
his origins, his original place is not known. Some say he was from Peshawar. Some say he was from Swat. Some say he was from UP. He was from UP. He was from UP. So it's not clear. His place of origin is not clear.
Clear, exactly. And secondly, also, obviously he was a religious fanatic, because I was searching the net. I mean, last day I was just trying to get that first-hand account of what actually verbatim he has said during that, and I actually got it. I got it on Wikipedia. I would like to read this out. He is addressing a big Muslim mob on 21st of June 1931, and while he is addressing them, he's saying, and I quote, "Muslim brothers, the time has come now. We should not meet force by great force to put an end to the brutalities to which you are subjected, nor will they solve issue of disrespect to Quran. You must rely on your strength and wage a relentless war against oppression." So here operation is referring to the rule of the Dogra Hindu king of Jammu, Maharaja Hari Singh. And then he says, and then he actually points his fingers towards the palace of Hindu Maharaja, and he shouts, "Raise it to the ground, raise it to the ground, raise it to the ground." And then he says in that speech, he also says, "We don't have any machine guns, but we have plenty of stones and brickbats." And then the mob did the rest, and this is where he incited, and unfortunately victims once again were Kashmiri Pandits, Hindus. The Mecho Atmas Ak Sawal, what I wanted to actually know from you, Dilip ji, because you are the senior most person here, you see an angle of disrespect of Quran, या you see narrative कि Islam खतरे में है. Was there any background to it?
Yes, there was a background. Jammu, in Jammu, there was some that policeman had some thrown away somebody's beddings, and there were some surahs of Holy Quran in that, and they fell down, and this was then उन्होंने हवा फैलाई, कह रहे कुरान का डिस्ट्रो। कश्मीर में भी कहीं गंदी जगह पर पेजेस मिले थे कुरान के, तो वहां भी ये डेलिबरेटली किया गया था। आप रिलीजियस बुक को कहीं फाड़ के फेंक दें, ये डेलिबरेटली किया गया था। इसका बैकग्राउंड था कि कहीं फेंक दिया गया था, रास्ते में कहीं फेंक दिया गया था, और लोगों के दिमाग में, और ये ऑब्वियसली मुस्लिम्स कुड नॉट डू इट, तो ये नेचुरली आप कह सकते थे कि ये तो महाराजा हिंद, अदर कम्युनिटी, हिंदू सरकार ने किया है, या जो कि हिंदू राजा ने किया। तो देयर वाज अ बैकग्राउंड कि कहीं कुरान का डिसेक्रेशन किया गया था, पेजेस फेंके कहीं मिले थे, और जम्मू में भी किया गया था। मतलब वो बाई चांस हो गया था, लेकिन उसको मनाया, जैसा कि बताया जाता है कि उसको उसको उछाला गया।
करेक्ट। And I think what I read from the internet, that this guy Abdul, who actually triggered all this, incited the mobs and everything, he was an employee of the British government, British colonial government. Major Butt.
He was his cook. He was his cook.
And he was
from Yorkshire regiment.
And then it also says that he was posted at Peshawar, and then on a vacation to Kashmir.
And yet he'd come on vacation.
This guy was like, continuously going to Khanaka, Shah Hamdan Mosque in Srinagar. And once, one fine day on 25, not one day on 21st of June, he what I just narrated, this is what he addressed and how he addressed, and he actually.
That's right, because ये चीजें हमें नेट से मिल सकती हैं, but हमें किस लेंस से, how are we able to put it into perspective,
in the right perspective, exactly,
right, जैसे कि ये बातें भी आपको बहुत सारे लोगों से सुनने को मिलेंगी कि जैसे कि कॉल फैमिली खानका मोहल्ला की, ऐसी स्टोरी कई फैमिलीज की है। 1990 में ऐसी स्टोरीज रिपीट हुई, क्योंकि तब तो पूरे कश्मीर के कश्मीरी पंडित जम्मू आ गए थे कि वहां पर हिंदू प्लेस था। तो ये बात पहले से ही एक स्क्वीज जो था कि 1931 से ही कश्मीरी पंडित उन मोहल्लों में आना शुरू हो गए थे, पोलराइजेशन चल रहा था। तो ये जेनोसाइडल एनवायरनमेंट को दिखाता है कि दिस वाज जेनोसाइडल एनवायरनमेंट, और इसकी डिनायल के लिए कश्मीरी मुस्लिम्स ने योम शोहदा को बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से यूज किया, जो कि आज मनाया जाता है। कश्मीर पाकिस्तान वाले भी मनाते हैं, उनका ऑफिशियल रिकॉग्निशन।
I think they are still celebrating this as.
They are still whether they are celebrating, but they celebrate शहीद को तो सेलिब्रेट ही किया जाता है, क्योंकि वो आजादी की जंग लड़ते हुए शहीद हुए थे।
Achha, I think Dilip ji, sorry to interrupt you here, but I think you made a very important point, जिसका ध्यान मेरी, मतलब I did not think of that, but you said that episode, that event, that genocidal wave of 13 July 1913, did that also trigger some kind of exodus at that time back in?
Yes.
Certain families were forced to leave.
And yes. They decided to leave कि अब यहाँ रहना गड़बड़ होता। Yes, and with every genocidal wave, there has been exodus. With every genocidal wave.
I think Nitin is also, listening very patiently. Nitin,
yes,
do you have any
yes,
question?
No. He can, Nitin can tell about, because he has done, Nitin ka kaam hai. He has done comparative genocidal study of Armenian and Kashmir Pandit genocide. He did it way back, many years back.
He is actually the coiner. He has actually coined the word panditocide. So I did definitely.
Yes.
I expect him to, say something on this.
So if Nitin, given your word panditocide, how do you see this 1931 episode, 13 July? Because it was not an isolated incident. Before this, in February, in Kanikut, a whole family was killed. And there are some members who were in Srinagar, and one who was sleeping with one Gujar servant, and whose testimony in court uh, facilitated the sentencing of the perpetrators. Uh,
Right.
they got the sentence. They were law took its course. So, how do you see this 13 July as because this certainly has been a genocidal incident, uh, and it
Right.
is the fifth wave of genocide. आप
Right.
किस तरह से इसको देखते हैं?
First of all, Namaskar, Sayagni, and I would like to begin by paying my tributes to the memory of all those who have been victims and survivors of such crimes. Uh, how I see 13 July, I think there is hardly anything I know beyond what has already been mentioned by the two of you. So, what I would like to do is, I would like to give my sort of understanding or perspective, if I may call it that, about how I see such a carnage, such a genocidal assault, and what it means to the community. I think primarily, if I touch upon the fact that this day has been for several decades, it's been observed as the Martyrs' Day by the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir as an official holiday. I think that has a very strong messaging of denial of genocide in it, and
Exactly.
that can be analyzed in a way where I personally feel that denial can happen in many forms and many ways. And there is one particular way of denial that I observe in this celebration or the observance of this Martyrs' Day that was going on for so many decades is that uh, the perpetrator is denied. So, to deny that a genocide has happened, maybe a political party or a state or a group who want to deny the genocide will not directly deny the victimhood of Kashmiri Pandits, but will deny the existence of perpetrator group.
Exactly.
Then,
That has been done.
It's a good point. Yeah.
so for
Good.
them, what they do is, I think they do it very intelligently in three steps. The first step is to deny that there is any perpetrator. Then,
Right.
whoever the perpetrator is, to give them a shield, to give them a cover, and to reduce the chances or the scope of them being held accountable or being identified as perpetrator group. Uh, the erstwhile state normalized and then glamorized the perpetrator group.
Exactly.
They not only victimized the perpetrator group, they glamorized them for the consequences they had to bear for the crimes they committed. So I think from denial of a perpetrator group to normalization to their victimization, projected victimization to glamorization. It's a fantastic example of denial in the contemporary times. And there is also one very profound thing that I observe in this is that in such a process of the perpetrator group having such a strategy where they reduce the scope of being identified as perpetrators, beyond glamorizing their position, what they also do is they claim this victimhood, right? So when they're claiming the victimhood, first of all, there is no shame. If we see around in our community or many communities around the world, there is a sense of uh, inferiority complex that comes with the sense of victimhood. So victimhood is broadly maybe perceived as a sense of defeat, right? So a lot of people don't want to outrightly identify as victims or outrightly project their victimhood or portray their victimhood out in the open. So to mention
Yeah,
is
that's
broadly
that's
these 2 points. One is that there is a strong messaging in the glamorization of the whole perpetrator group, which just cancels out the chance of them being, officially be recognized as perpetrators. And the second thing is that our community needs to, I feel, especially the younger generation, needs to understand that it's the memory that needs to be contained, which can only come through projecting our victimhood. And projecting victimhood does not mean that we are projecting a weak or a powerless state. It just means that we have a memory which is intact, and that is a prerequisite for any group that is demanding justice and their fundamental rights in the society, especially in a democracy. So, until and unless we don't call out the perpetrator, we don't mention that we are the victim group or the survivor group, it doesn't, we won't have that memory instilled in us that will guarantee a future where the progeny is conscious of that memory and then they demand for justice. Because justice can only be demanded primarily by the victim. So we need to understand how intelligently this idea of victimhood is being falsely used by the perpetrator group, and a sense of shame is being instilled in the actual victim group where they are just uncomfortable projecting their victimhood. These are the 2 points that I observed, which I wanted to mention in the opening.
Yeah, these are absolutely spot on, bang on points. And this actually, the way you put it, that the real victims have that sense of shame. They do not want to come out. They don't want to shout out. They don't want to tell their stories, and that instilling of an inferiority complex. And why at the same time,
If
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
if I may just come here, so there's a thin line between uh, having a sense of discomfort while, or having a sense of maybe a social inferiority complex while projecting the victimhood, and uh, not telling the stories as often as they should be. I think there is a thin line between these two things, because if you consider any heinous crime, the victim will always have the hesitation to repeat the story, or hear the stories more often than not, because for them, for somebody who has directly experienced those crimes or survived them, uh, it's a traumatic. It's sort of repeating the whole thing,
Reliving that
psychologically.
trauma. Yeah, exactly.
So I think we need to also draw that thin line, that there's a difference between there are different kinds of hesitations of a victim also. So, but there is one of them which I wanted to highlight here, is that consciously we should not feel the shame in being identified as a victim group, because that is a prerequisite for us being an aggrieved party to demand justice in a legal way. That's what I want to put.
So
Yeah,
you have made a very
you can continue.
you have made a very important point, Nitin, that their victims, of course, have a sense of defeat and sense of shame in them. That's right. But here is where the academic field of genocide studies comes for the rescue. Because, how can we project our victimhood? You know what Yad Vashem, the Jewish organization, the Israeli organization does? It goes on collecting and calling those people righteous. It goes on collecting the evidence of those, and it is very strict norms are there. It's not so that anybody can claim that I have been a rescuer. So they find rescuers. What do they assert through it? Through identifying the rescuers and being grateful to them, they assert their victimhood. That is why I pointed out that there have been rescuers. There have been rescuers in 1990 also. Those rescuers who were told that who were just, they were pressurized to tell the whereabouts of their Hindu neighbors. They were killed, but they didn't tell the whereabouts of their neighbors. So the rescuer emphasizes and asserts the existence of a perpetrator, and that in turn keeps the memory of our victimhood alive. So, this, what you have said, makes it clear that there is no way but the field of genocide studies that we should go for. We should study genocide, and then only we can be able to make our narrative or stand for any other community that has been subjected to genocide. We can understand their situation. We can understand how perpetrators, uh, you made a very important point by saying that
Thank you.
they glamorized their this perpetratorhood through being a victim, through dubbing themselves as victims, because they just played on 22 killings that were done by Maharaja's forces because they rebelled against Maharaja.
And
So
and those
those
and
20,
those 22 writers that were killed, they were basically the criminals and killers, and
yes, yes,
they were actually highlighting them as the martyrs, and
exactly. And
the real victims, the Hindu victims, were brushed under the carpet.
yes, and that was the cover. In 1990, when Kashmiri Pandits were being killed, they were celebrating the Matthias Day. And
Absolutely.
when Vandahama massacre, Nadimarg massacres occurred, they
Sandarhama,
were
right?
celebrating the Matthias Day
Exactly.
because basically they are the victims. They were perpetrating violence, they were perpetrating genocide, but they were celebrating the Matthias Day. That is the brilliance. You have to appreciate that they are very brilliant perpetrators, and nobody among the Hindu groups or anybody else. It was for the first time in 2019 December that the present government abolished the um, acceptance by the government
Yeah,
that
the
the
condoning of that wave of genocide as a martyrs.
yes,
Exactly.
yes,
And I think Nitin has actually summarized it very well. He has actually put out the gist of what we have been discussing, that
very good, very good.
that persecution, that the persecution by the perpetrator is, how, look how it is glorified, how it is celebrated, how it is condoned by a state, a dispensation, as official holiday, until very
Exactly.
recently. And then the real victimhood, the genuine victimhood, that has been, instilled with a sense of shame, with a sense of all those kind of complexes, that he is least hesitant in coming out and speaking out what he should be speaking, how all these massacres and all these things, because Kashmiri Pandit genocide is obviously, and that's the right, because I have been listening to you, I have been listening to T2G, and you know one thing that I have drawn, I mean, this is what I feel very strongly, that Kashmiri Pandit genocide, no doubt, is the most ignored and unrecognized genocide on this planet as on date. And पिछले 700 सालों से कश्मीर में जो हमला हुआ है, कश्मीर में जो हमला हुआ है, वो केवल इस दृष्टिकोण से ना देखा जाए कि वो केवल कश्मीरी पंडितों पर हमला हुआ है, वो पूरी एक सनातन सिविलाइजेशन पर, वैदिक सिविलाइजेशन पर, इंडिक सिविलाइजेशन पर हमला हुआ, और उस हमले को हम जिनोसाइड कहते हैं, उसी उसी जिनोसाइड का देयर इज, और वो केवल, नॉट ओनली हैव कश्मीरी पंडित्स फ्रॉम लास्ट 700 years just face the genocide, but then we have also faced the denial, the negation of that genocide by the subsequent governments. And like Dilip ji has been highlighting this from a very long time, that let's not call them as last 7 exoduses that we have faced. They are the 7 waves of genocide. That's why, on all earlier shows, I'll not call them shows, but all such educative programs, we have been saying that it's very important that we use the right diction, terminology, nomenclature when we are addressing our own genocide, when we are telling our own story. And going back to 13 July 1931, I think I probably missed out. After that hate speech that this guy Abdul, he makes there in front of a mob, he obviously, the authorities, the ruling authority of Maharaja, they record it, and once they record it, this guy gets arrested, and then there is a hearing that falls on 13th July. So on 21st, in the premises of that mosque, he gives a hate speech, and then he uses all these narratives like Islam khatre mein hai, Quran ki discretion hui, he is definitely, I mean, if you will go through whatever little biography we have available of him, he was a hardcore religious fanatic. And then once he's arrested, and then this is 13 July is when the hearing in the jail, is the sessions court gives a hearing. But then what happens on that very day of 13 July, the gates are bombarded, gates are attacked by the mob, and then they stormed into the jail. They shout all kinds of communal slogans. Is namtas masta is bozan, Kashmir mein rehna hoga, Allahu Akbar, all those kind of things. And then ultimately what happens, that all efforts by the administration of that erstwhile all those officers every day actually failed to placate and pacify that unruly mob. And Tanuk aftermath is what we Kashmiri Pandits call as the Black Day, the anti KP attack day, or Batta loot, or like Dilip ji has been emphasizing this for, let's call it wave genocide. So these mobs, they get out of the control. They attack all the Hindu shops and houses on a large scale in Srinagar city, suburbs, from Maharajganj to Bhori Kadal to Early Kadal. The Kashmiri Hindu shops are they are raided. Other localities such as Safa Kadal, Nawa Kadal, they also become centers of loot. And then streets are littered literally with the property. Understand what large scale arson has have our ancestors that they have witnessed. I mean, Hindu shopkeepers, not only just the Kashmiri Pandits, Bora Punjabi community, Hindu community used to be there, and not only they are looted. I mean, the owners are molested, wide scale stone pelting is happening. Hindu merchants have lost, I mean, goods worth lakhs on that day. And 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 then Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah comes and he gives a call that this has to be celebrated. This violence, this arson, this loot, this genocide on Kashmiri Pandits has to be celebrated as Martyrs Day. This is and Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah is the same guy who mentions as Kashmiri Pandits as fifth columnist in his autobiography Atish-e-Chinar. So this tells us a lot. But the very important point here is that when we talk from the perpetrator's point of view, we have to understand in one line what they are doing. There is a adage, a saying in English: the pot calling the kettle black. Ulta chor kotwal ko hi daate. So this is a very important point. And I want to go back to Nitin here, and I want to ask Nitin, when you hear all these macabre tales, all these genocidal anecdotes from the likes of Dilip ji, from other scholars, do you think 1990, 1931, or all those prior five waves, is there a pattern? Is there any difference, or do you see you see this as one single picture?
No, so perpetrator group will function. They will strategize according to the given circumstances. As long as the objective of the perpetrator group remains constant, there is no difference. These waves, the reason that ours is a continual and not a continuous genocide is because, precisely and only because, the circumstances were such that they could not do it in a continuous way. But the fact that they did it in a continual way is in itself a testimony that they, even till date to this second, have not given up on their objective. And right now, they are, as Titu sir calls it, and Dilip ji and all of our scholars have taught us about the phenomena of consolidation. That is what they are protecting right now. That is what they are working on right now. Because it's not just the biological extinction that matters for the perpetrator group. It's actually the identity and it's actually the cultural uh, identity that they want to just get rid of from that they want to uproot from that place.
Correct.
So to answer your question, there has been no difference.
Correct.
It's just the modus operandi have been different in different regimes.
Mhm.
Even if we talk about 1931 or even 1990, when it was part of the Union of India, the whole of Jammu and Kashmir. Still, there was such a massive wave of genocide, right? That was seventh massive wave of genocide.
Correct.
So there have been in the previous times before 47, there have been different kind of state actors that carried out this thing. After that, there have been different forms of state actors and non-state actors that have participated in this genocide. But as long as the uh, objective of the perpetrator group to commit a genocide, to carry out a genocide of our community, the indigenous Kashmiri Pandit community, remains the same. There is only one thing that uh, there is how that I wanted to mention, and that is that it just came to my mind. Uh, am I audible? I can see my video is getting stuck.
No, 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 you are audible. Your
You're
voice
audible.
was,
Audible.
you're audible. Yeah, please go ahead.
Keep going.
Okay,
Keep
okay,
going.
is it? Okay. So the comparison that I want to make is that you know how we see the Nandi ji outside the Gyan Vapi,
Exactly.
and how
Hmm.
that Nandi ji has become a testimony and evidence to prove everything that that place is about.
Exactly.
I think in a similar fashion, the way previous governments, the state government of Jammu and Kashmir, observed this day as the Martyrs' Day, it's not just a brilliant way to deny that there is a perpetrator group and therefore there is no genocide, but it is also an evidence. It is a testimony of them admitting to the genocide. Because any perpetrator group will stand with its own soldiers. And those people who raided our community, who committed those genocidal crimes, were soldiers for the perpetrator group.
Correct.
So it's not only a way to deny their existence as perpetrators, it is also an evidence. Like the Nandi Maharaj is a testimony of the Shivling being there. The fact that there was an official holiday on this day and they are considered as martyrs is in a similar fashion a testimony of them admitting of the genocide. That is also another perspective that we need to account for, and we need to really tell the world this story that look, here is this genocidal assault, and here are the perpetrator people, the perpetrator group who officially recognized these perpetrators of that wave of genocide as martyrs. So they were, in fact, clearly and outrightly admitting of the crimes they committed and, in fact, celebrating it.
Celebrate. Right.
So that is one perspective that I wanted to add to the previous one that I had mentioned.
That's a
Yeah.
brilliant analogy and a metaphor that you just gave. Nandi Maharaj, and how he is a living testimony. Dilipji, Nitin mentioned a point that it is ultimately the consolidation of genocide and its consolidation of the victimhood as well. I want to know from you this consolidation of genocide, and then when this perpetrator group is inciting the violence, and later they are using this false narrative that look, they were the ones who were the victims of the Hindu rule, the Hindu the rulers, so how do you look at this consolidation of genocide when in the larger ambit of the genocidal academic studies, particularly talking of this day 1931 13th July, would consolidation of genocide wave, all these terms would be right to put them for this, to map them against this day?
We have to understand that what is the jihadi way of genocide. Jihad waits.
Right.
Jihad waits. It can wait till eternity to achieve its goal.
Right.
We have to be very clear that jihadi system is a very brilliant system, a very patient system. It has got patience. Okay, no, that is why it almost every genocide goes in waves, but there are cut and dried waves of 7 waves of genocide in Kashmir. Okay, in any genocide, when the first victim is killed, the consolidation of genocide starts.
Starts exactly.
So, with every religious place desecrated, the uh, consolidation starts.
Happening.
We the best expression is the best expressions of genocidal destructions are given by Pandit Jonaraj in his Rajatarangini, and even Srivara after him. So consolidation goes on, and in the process, when the victim community, or I take Maharaja as a member of victim community, because um, he was a Hindu king, a very vulnerable king who was ruling a Muslim majority. So that kind of king is always vulnerable. That he had got very less Hindu subjects. So he was also a victim in that sense, and you can that victim king, and who stood by his rule and these his subjects, and in the even in 1947 he tried his best. He gave orders to Brigadier Rajendra Singh Jamwal that fight till last man, last bullet, and Brigadier Rajendra Singh Jamwal did exactly that. So he acted as a king, but with every thing, and what he did, uh, he um, he had no option but to shoot, and those rioters, and they were shot, and 22 of them were used as the cover up.
Cover-ups.
That is the problem. That is the achievement of the perpetrator community, that they shifted the whole narrative. One, how difficult it is to deal with a formidable, brilliant, intelligent enemy who's adept in making narratives.
Making narratives, exactly.
And
Very good point.
just they turned the tables, and 22 of them, and they dragged it for decades, officially recognized it
19
as the
years.
Matthias Day.
Right.
So that is how narrative works. Or the whole discussion here is about the narrative. Their narratives, their achievement. They are still living that narrative. And what we are trying to do is just a very small step in building our narrative, in demolishing that narrative. That basically it is not possible that under the killing of 22 people you will hide, you will overmask 7 waves of genocide. No. So that is our duty, that we are not going to.
And Dilip ji, for a matter of fact, we know that 22 writers were killed, and it's not
Right here.
exactly. So
Right
the
here.
right word is writer. So unfortunately, I mean, as Nitin was also saying, the state of the day till 2019, the state of Jammu and Kashmir, it actually condoned those writers, it celebrated those writers, it helped in successfully establishing those writers as martyrs, and hence we had that a state holiday. सवाल हमारा चाहिए था ब्याह का चीज कि when we talk of the figures, statistically speaking, we know that there were 21 or 22 writers who went berserk, and just to keep uphold, just to put things in place, and just to maintain law and order, that Maharaja Singh had to he had to use force and all that thing. But when we talk of the figures and statistics, do we exactly know how many Kashmiri Pandits were killed on that day? Do we have any sort of data, any sort of this? Because I read somewhere that 13 or so, and there are some probably figures that actually were blacked out, that did not come out. But
it is not important that how many Kashmiri Pandits were killed.
correct.
What is important is that just 22, just 22 were used to overmask all waves of genocide,
Correct.
all preceding waves of genocide. The perpetrator who the perpetrator is a victim.
Correct.
That is important. Why do they celebrate this 13th July? It is just to assert in the public opinion that they are the victims. They have been the victims. A Hindu government has victimized them. They have been made victims by a Hindu government.
Right.
That is the point here. And that is the point. That is what facilitates constant polarization. That is what facilitates the maintenance of the genocidal environment.
And what does
No.
what does that do? What does that do to the historic susceptibility or vulnerability of Kashmiri Pandits and genocide victims? Consolidation
Because
of their victimhood. I mean,
yes, if we can point these things out,
right,
that their plans go like this,
right,
that automatically emphasizes our victimhood. That actual victims have been we.
right.
We have been actual victims.
Absolutely.
What we have done today is that we have tried to analyze that. What kind of strategies were used? Very simple strategies. 22 people, they rioted, they were killed, and immediately the emphasis was shifted. That is how the perpetrators used the opportunity.
And
to deny.
That's Dilipji, exactly the same question that I put across to Nitin, that what has changed from 1931 to 1990? Because Yamsad Burhan Wani was killed. Again, the media, the perpetrator, they went up in, all kind of narratives that, look, the boy of a school headmaster was killed. So he was again celebrated as a martyr. So
yes. Shift of emphasis.
So
the boy of
what is the actual difference between those 22 guys there and Burhan Wani just recently?
Nothing. It is the same kind of strategy. This is the softening and glamorizing what Nitin underlined.
Right.
The glamorizing of the perpetrator. The glamorizing and making a martyr out of a perpetrator is glamorization. Here, the son of a headmaster, a teacher, a very sacred job, was killed. So that is again the same kind of strategy, just whitewash the perpetrator. That is, so same kind of strategies used very imaginatively are being employed and have been employed recently. So these strategies are not going to work.
Absolutely.
And because what the wrong that has been done is that nobody has tried to analyze or put before the public these strategies that were actually used in garb of a particular day, and those strategies were exercised to just overmask the waves of genocide they have perpetrating. And this is to be emphasized that there have been rescuers among them. There have been, I underlined some rescuers, I told you, and that
Definitely.
Those rescuers make it clear that there have been perpetrators who have targeted Kashmir.
Right, exactly. So
I think
let me just bring in Nitin here. So Nitin, like, what happened on 13 July 1931 has happened. What happened on 19 January 1990 has happened. We know all these 7 waves of genocide. We have we have actually discussed them. We have we have put all kind of articles. We have done all kind of things, protest and everything. Let's talk about solution. Because you are the youngest one here in the panel, tell me, let's talk. Let's actually uh, dwell on these things, and what is this way forward? What How do you look as a youngster? How do you look, at it, and what solutions to, if you want to put across a bunch of solutions to this, how do we reverse it, or are we actually able to reverse it, or is it actually irreversible, or is there any way out? How do you as a youngster look at it, and what is the message you want to give to the youngsters out here?
Uh, See, first of all, with no intention to correct you, but I would like to say that, as you said, 1931 has happened and 1990 has happened. I would like to say, as I said earlier, that the modus operandi and the scale, the strategy of the perpetrator changes. So, in my opinion, 1931 is still happening, 1990 is still happening
Going on.
until and unless we do not get the due justice, until and unless the perpetrator group is not recognized, the genocide is not recognized,
Correct.
it is not punished and prevented for all times to come, until and unless we do not have a foothold in Kashmir, we do not have Panun Kashmir, we do not have a homeland that we can actually call a homeland where our civilization revives, it grows, and our identities, revive in its own natural habitat. I think 1931 will keep happening, 1990 will keep happening. We saw it happening 90 years later in 2021 also, and we saw how the who are also called as strategic hostages, the employees, the Kashmiri Pandit employees who are in a way forced to work in Kashmir because they have been demanding their relocation outside Kashmir because they don't feel that their fundamental rights, the fundamental freedoms are protected in Kashmir. And because they are Kashmiri Pandits, so it's already a vulnerable group, it's a soft target, and they have not been granted any ears, any consideration. And in fact, their whole agitation was crushed, unfortunately, by a very insensitive system that forced them to go back to the genocidal environment because they just halted, they stopped their salaries for about 8 months, and uh, they did everything that they could do to crush the agitation. That's a massive failure. So the complaints are not just historic; they are contemporary, they are current as well. And I feel as much as it will be great if we speak about our genocide more in the present tense than in the past tense, that will be really good because that will also keep this consciousness alive in people, uh, not just Kashmiri Pandits, but everyone who is empathetic towards the Kashmiri Pandit community, that it's an ongoing genocide, that it has
Right.
not stopped,
It
that
hasn't
it's not
stopped.
a thing of the past, that it's a thing of the present, and it's
Correct.
still happening. Kashmiri Pandits are still in exile, no matter where they live, whether they live in Johannesburg or whether they live in Jagti, they are all in exile. So
Absolutely.
that's the point I want to make. And talking about solutions, there are solutions that our community has already presented. There are a couple of key objectives our community through Panun Kashmir has already projected in front of the government of India. There are certain things that I'll highlight those as well, but there are certain things which are more uh, internal for our community that I feel need to happen more. And that is that the memory of our exile, of our displacement, of our culture, of our art forms, of our entire identity need to be imparted to the next generations. And I feel that more and more people are conscious of homeland. Like we talk about exile consciousness, right? So
Correct.
my perspective is that a person is as exile conscious as she or he is homeland conscious. Because only when a person relates to the idea of home and homeland will she or he realize that they are in exile.
Good
Because
point.
it's not just a matter of making, convincing someone or telling someone that, okay, from today onwards, you have to say to the world that you are in exile. It's the consciousness that needs to be instilled. It's the consciousness which perhaps is already there. There is genetic memory that is already there. It just needs some storytelling, some truth telling, in fact, if not storytelling, some truth telling, and a constant dialogue in the community, which can keep that memory or the memory of homeland alive in the generation, especially who were born like me post 1990, who did not even have the basic fundamental birthright to be born in their own homes. We were
Absolutely.
born in exile.
Good
So
point.
this consciousness then in turn gives you the responsibility of acting,
Right.
of taking actions, of taking steps that will uh, get our community due justice that has been denied for all these years. So this homeland consciousness giving exile consciousness, and then exile consciousness giving homeland consciousness, this entire process needs to be there through and through across generations. No matter, I was just reading although I have read it earlier as well. I was just recently reading the Distress Sales Act, the Immovable Properties Act,
Property discuss here.
and in that, yeah, and in there is this section which is the definitions, right,
Mhm,
of various terms that have been used in the act,
mhm,
and in the definition of migrant, as it has been legally defined in it,
mhm.
it says, I don't remember the exact words, but I'm just paraphrasing it. It says that a migrant is also that person
Mhm.
who left Kashmir for reasons other than the turmoil, who left Kashmir for occupation or for other personal reasons, but currently does not have the ordinary circumstances to reside in Kashmir. That Kashmiri Pandit is also quote unquote a migrant. We have the problem with the word migrant. That is the main focus that we've always been working on. That we are
We
displaced,
work on
and
that. Right.
more so victims and survivors of genocide. That is the actual status. But even in that act, the term migrant is defined. I'm just trying to elaborate on the exile consciousness part. So
Correct.
even those whose parents or grandparents might have moved out of Kashmir, I want to tell them that, do you have all your fundamental rights protected in Kashmir as Kashmiri Pandits? If no, you are also in exile.
Absolutely. Very
Just
good point.
because
Very good point.
just because your ancestors did not leave Kashmir for the reasons that all of us left Kashmir for, does not mean that you are not in exile. So, and
Exactly.
and I would also like to mention that those Kashmiri Pandits who are even living in Kashmir and don't have the fundamental rights protected are also living in exile, because exile is not a geographical status, in my opinion. It's a
It's a
psychological status also. It's a
correct.
sociological status also. So it's the condition in which a human is put also. Those Kashmiri Pandits who are living in Kashmir are also not able to um, you know uh, have all the freedoms that a human should have in a democracy. So they're
Absolutely.
also subjected to a lot of atrocities and psychological atrocities that they go through every single day that we cannot even imagine of. I've spoken to some of them, even some of the women who are serving in Kashmir under the PM's package, and it's just horrific. The things that they go through, it's just really really terrible.
Absolutely.
So we need to understand, these things, and we need to tell our story, tell our truth as much as possible in whatever capacity and in whatever platform possible. And further talking about solutions, in my opinion, if I broadly sum it up in three
Right.
tangible things, beyond us having this consciousness and the sense of being the aggrieved party and then demanding and fighting for our justice, which we have every right to do,
Mhm.
right? So there are three things that I would like to mention. Uh, First is that we need to, because if we are fighting, it's a legal battle, right? It's a political battle also. It's a cultural battle also. But getting justice in a democracy is primarily a legal battle. So, first thing that we need to do, each and every one of us, in whatever capacity we can and wherever we can, we need to study genocide. We need to study genocide, especially from such eminent scholars like Dilip ji, we have Titu sir, and the entire team of Joan Ras that put so much effort in developing research on this subject, first time ever in India. Uh, I think that is something that all of us need to do. Read more. There is so much content on the internet. Understand what genocide is. Read the United Nations Convention. And curiosity is key, I think. मतलब जितना लोग जानना चाहते हैं वो उतना जानेंगे और उतना उन्हें समझ आएगा कि कितना जानना और बाकी है. तो
Absolutely.
मुझे लगता है कि सबसे पहले इस विषय को पढ़ना बहुत जरूरी है, इसका अध्ययन बहुत करना जरूरी है. और उसके बाद मुझे लगता है कि द टेंजिबल वी नीड की रैलिंग पॉइंट्स. एनी मूवमेंट और अ कॉज functions primarily on rallying points. And I feel the most immediate rallying point that our community has, and those who are not connected should connect to that rallying point, is the genocide bill that Panun Kashmir has proposed to the government of India.
Correct.
It's unfortunate that our nation, our country does not have a special law on this crime till date. Although there have been various occasions, two primarily in the Parliament of India, where the representatives of the state have in the past few years
Proposal.
mentioned on two different occasions that we already have certain laws in India that are enough to take
Care of the.
cognizance of
Correct.
crimes which are of the nature of genocide. But if we look at it, I think even if we take this as at its face value, the statement that we have existing laws are enough to deal with this crime, for 33 years, that system, those laws have really failed, or the system has failed to use those laws to give us justice, to punish the perpetrators, to hold the governments or the state actors responsible who were in power at that time, or to prevent the genocide to happen, right? Now is the time for them to realize that those laws are not enough, and there needs to be a special law that deals with punishing and preventing the crime of genocide in the entire country, right? And last but not the least, I would like to focus on the point that ultimately we need to sort of understand the importance. When I say we, I particularly mean the generation that was born post 1990. We need to understand the importance of having a homeland. We need to understand that no matter how much we work towards preserving our culture, our identity, it's just a matter of time. That's my opinion. That's my personal opinion. It's just a matter of time that you can, there's only a point till which you can preserve it outside of its natural habitat, right?
And
So
beyond
I
that, yeah,
feel
as
it's
well.
very important to be as important it is to have exile consciousness. It's very important to have homeland consciousness, and by homeland, obviously we mean Panun Kashmir, and we mean that there should be a protected homeland within Kashmir, so that we do not face an eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, or any next wave of genocide in all times to come. And as any community in the world, we have every right to protect our ethnicity, our indigenous identity and culture, our entire identity, what the way of life of a Kashmiri Pandit is, the lived life of Kashmiri Pandit. We have every right to protect it, to live it in our own natural habitat. And that habitat has to be Panun Kashmir, it has to be a protected homeland, it has to be centrally administered so that we do not face the political atrocities, the politically carried out genocides like the one in 1931. That's all I have to say right now.
Very well summed up. Very well summed up. And I think I can see there is a quote on your T-shirt. It says "Rise as one," and then that, I think
Yeah,
that
I
is
think
also that's also
that's
very
coincidental, but
well.
it's
I want to.
coincidental, but I think it's also divine intervention.
Absolutely, and I want, and then there is a saying that the coincidence is the language of the nature. I want to give the last word to Dr. Sir, Dr. Dilip Kumar Kol, and I think after that probably we can just recite a Gayatri mantra and we can paying tribute and obeisance to our martyrs. But before that, Dilip ji, my last question is, please educate us, because I think obviously we all need to get educated, and the people and the viewers who are listening to you, why is it very very important for state of India, government of India, nation of India to have a strong genocide law? Why is it important? And please also, elaborate a little bit in, with vis-a-vis the Kashmiri Pandit genocide.
Why is it important to have the genocide law? Why is it not? You know कि जेनोसाइड जब होता है तो वो एक्सपैंड होता है, क्योंकि अगर आप परपेट्रेटर को, अब विजावी कश्मीर अगर हम देखेंगे तो कश्मीर ने क्या साबित किया है 1931 के पर्सपेक्टिव में अगर हम देखेंगे, 13 जुलाई के पर्सपेक्टिव में अगर हम देखेंगे, तो दिनों दिन जेनोसाइड कंसोलिडेट होता चला गया है और 1990 में आपने फाइनल कंसोलिडेशन देखा। और आप जैसे नितिन ने जो बात की थी कि ये एम्प्लॉइज को बहुत परेशान किया गया, उनको बहुत परेशान किया गया, तो गवर्नमेंट ने एम्प्लॉइज को वहां बेचकर क्या किया? गवर्नमेंट ने कंसोलिडेशन को ब्रेक करने की कोशिश की है। किस तरह से ब्रेक करने की कोशिश की है कि वो आप अगर करने नहीं दे रहे हैं तो हम अपने प्रोटेक्शन में रखेंगे, लेकिन कश्मीरी पंडित्स को इस लैंड पर जरूर रखेंगे। पर वहां क्या है कि उस लैंड पर सिर्फ रखा जा रहा है, देयर इज नो लिव्ड लाइफ। तो ये लिव्ड लाइफ की जो बात है, ये लिव्ड लाइफ कैसे छीनी गई? जैसे कि हम जौनराज की बात करेंगे, कश्मीर देशाचारा नाम ध्वंसो अथ यवनय कृता। यवनों ने, जिहादियों ने, मुसलमानों ने कश्मीर देश के आचार का, कश्मीर देशाचार, प्लेस बिहेवियर, प्लेस में आप बिहेवियर कैसे करते हैं, उस आचार का ध्वंस किया। तो 1990 में उस प्लेस बिहेवियर का अंत हुआ, जिसके कारण वो प्लेस बिहेवियर जो है, जो अपने एनवायरमेंटल इकोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव में परवान चढ़ता है, तो वो प्लेस बिहेवियर की बात है। तो कश्मीर ने प्रूव किया कि आप किसी प्लेस को, उसकी कॉन्शियसनेस को, उसके बिहेवियर को खत्म कर सकते हैं इफ यू persevere for 7 centuries.
And like you said, jihad has a tendency to wait forever.
Wait. और ब्रिलियंस है, कितना पेशेंस है, ब्रिलियंट, ग्रेट पीपल, आई कॉल देम ग्रेट पीपल। वो पेशेंस से धीरे धीरे करते हैं, उनको पता है यू हैव टू फाइट टिल एटर्निटी।
एब्सोल्युटली।
तो जब तक हो, तो कश्मीर ने ये प्रूव किया कि जो 100% लैंड हिंदू लैंड था, जो 100, जहां एक कल्चर, पर्टिकुलर प्लेस बिहेवियर, पर्टिकुलर प्लेस कल्चर थ्राइव कर रहा था, जो एक हिंदू कल्चर था, उसको 100% नॉन हिंदू कल्चर में बदला जा सकता है,
कन्वर्ट कर,
और ये सक्सेसफुल है, कंसोलिडेटेड है।
Correct.
और जो कश्मीरी पंडित एम्प्लॉय, पीएम पैकेज एम्प्लॉइज ने जो डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन किया इतनी देर तक, वो डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन व्यर्थ नहीं गया। उन्होंने साबित किया कि कश्मीर में जेनोसाइडल एनवायरनमेंट है।
वेरी गुड।
और वहां अगर वो जाएंगे तो वो प्रोटेक्शन में रहना पड़ेगा।
करेक्ट।
और देखिए, सरकार ने इसको माना है कि वहां उनको रखना है तो प्रोटेक्शन में रखना है, तो सरकार वहां के जेनोसाइडल एनवायरनमेंट को एक्सेप्ट कर रही, हालांकि डायरेक्टली एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रही, क्योंकि आपको जी फोर्स, आप आपकी तनख्वाह बंद कर देंगे, लेकिन आपको वहीं रहना है। और आपको वहां कैसे रहना है, आपको, तो सरकार इनडायरेक्टली ये एडमिट कर रही है। अब अगर हम सरकार की बात देखेंगे तो सरकार में जेनोसाइड के लिए एक अलाइव, दिस सरकार, दिस गवर्नमेंट इज अलाइव टू जेनोसाइड की जेनोसाइड क्या होता है। आज से लगभग 2-3 साल पहले प्रधानमंत्री जी ने रवांडा को लगभग 100 काउस का गिफ्ट किया, 100 काउस का।
Cow diplomacy, right?
काउ डिप्लोमेसी नहीं, इट इज वाई काउ डिप्लोमेसी।
Right.
रवांडा को क्यों दिया? रवांडा में
Cows
जो
were also
जेनोसाइड,
killed in the genocide there.
यस, काउस वहां कहा गया था क्योंकि
Bovicide.
रवांडा में जो तुत्सीज थे, दे वर बेसिकली काउ हर्डर्स, गायें पालने वाले थे। गायों के साथ उनके बहुत सारे रिचुअल्स जुड़े हुए हैं हिंदूज की तरह,
Correct.
और वो वहां के, तो प्रधानमंत्री जी ने क्यों दिए? देखिए, हमें इसको क्यों काउस ही दी वो, हाँ ये फाइनेंशियल एड भी दिया, लेकिन काउस क्यों दी? यानी वो उनके कल्चरल जेनोसाइड के बारे में कॉन्शियस थे। उन्होंने और इस न्यूज को ज्यादा हाईलाइट नहीं किया गया,
नहीं किया गया।
फॉर ऑब्वियस रीजंस कि
Reasons,
वो
obviously.
शायद एक्सपोज हो जाएगी ये बात कि प्रधानमंत्री जी किसी कौम के जेनोसाइड के बारे में कॉन्शियस हैं।
Correct.
क्योंकि हुतू लीडर्स ने कहा था कि किल तुत्सीज एंड ईट देयर काउस, जिससे कि उनका बेसिक कल्चरल बेस ही खत्म हो जाए।
Right.
तो प्रधानमंत्री जी ने ये कल्चरल बेस को रेस्टोर करने की कोशिश की है। इसका ये मतलब है कि वो कॉन्शियस हैं। इसके ये मैं ऑब्जेक्टिव फैक्ट्स बता रहा हूं, ये गवर्नमेंट को फेवर करने की बात नहीं है, लेकिन हाउ द प्राइम मिनिस्टर थिंक्स। तो इस मामले में कश्मीर में वो क्यों नहीं सोच रहे, लेकिन कश्मीर में वो बहुत सारी चीजें होने दे रहे हैं। जेनोसाइडल एनवायरनमेंट इज क्लियर।
So Dilip ji, sorry to interrupt again, but do you think if Prime Minister, who is the head of the state of the country, he has this consciousness ki tati kya go when he, gifts them cows, he knows that cultural genocide, how they are attached
yes,
to
yes,
and that obviously brings one to thinking to the point that obviously if he knows what has happened there, so obviously he must be knowing what has happened to us as Kashmiri Pandits. But what is actually stopping him? Is it the electoral compulsions? Is it the vote bank politics?
there can be, how does Kashmir matter from electoral point of view? Okay. If his government loses everything, every seat in Kashmir, how will it affect the overall his overall performance in electoral,
right,
in the Indian parliament? It is not important. Important is that a lot of investment has been gone. This is opportunity cost, जैसे हम सिंपली इकोनॉमिक्स में
opportunity cost, right?
जब आप कश्मीरी पंडित को वहां भेजेंगे, आपको एक बार फिर से एक्सोडस कराना है,
क्योंकि it's not based on the principles of non-refoulement, exactly.
हाँ, तो आपको एक्सोडस फिर से कराना है, आपको वहां से उनको एरिया देना है, उस एरिया की सिक्योरिटी बढ़ानी है। वहां नेचुरली रिजेंटमेंट बहुत सारा होगा, आपको उस रिजेंटमेंट को कंट्रोल करना है। सो अपॉर्चुनिटी को, और ऑलरेडी कश्मीरी पंडित्स की रिलीफ रिहेबिलिटेशन पर बहुत सारा खर्च हो चुका है। तो विच इज इजियर, सबसे इजी क्या है, सबसे कम खर्चा किसमें है हर लिहाज से, रिसोर्स वाइज एंड मनी वाइज? तो सबसे कम ये है कि सिचुएशन को आप कश्मीरी पंडित्स को अगर वहां भेजेंगे तो उनको वहां कंसोलिडेशन करना, इट इज इजी फॉर देम। उनको सिर्फ एक किलिंग करनी है या अगेन कंसोलिडेशन,
राइट।
क्योंकि कश्मीरी पंडित एम्प्लॉइज जो हैं वो सिक्योरिटी में क्यों है, कहीं किसी का किलिंग ना हो जाए। और इसका मतलब सरकार जानती है कि इनकी ताक में लोग बैठे हैं। सो इट इज नॉट वेरी इजी टू handle
challenge,
Kashmir.
right? Challenging.
It is a very very big challenge कि कॉस्ट वाइज आपको फिर से एक वॉर के लिए तैयार, इंटरनल बैटल के लिए तैयार होना है। ऑलरेडी आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट जो हो चुका है वो किस वे में हो चुका है। सो गवर्नमेंट्स थिंक इन मेनी वेज। हमें ऑब्जेक्टिवली देखिए, गवर्नमेंट को naturally they have not, no government has done anything for us, but can the governments do? कंसोलिडेशन की सिचुएशन में आपको, अब गवर्नमेंट के पास कितने सारे चैलेंजेस हैं कि पहले ही इंटरनेशनल फोर्सेस जो हैं वो कह रहे हैं कि इंडिया में एक पोटेंशियल मुस्लिम जेनोसाइड हो सकता है। तो जब आप जेनोसाइड लॉ में मुस्लिम्स को प्रोसिक्यूट करेंगे, नेचुरली आप प्रोसिक्यूट करेंगे, तो इंटरनेशनली फिर से एक नया फोर्स खड़ा हो जाएगा। तो सरकार अभी लाई लो कर रही है, सरकार अभी लाई लो कर रही है। सो how the situations are going to change, nobody can tell.
Nobody knows.
So nobody can tell. But
Dilip ji, I have
Rwanda episode tells that there are people in the government who are clear about what is genocide और किस genocide में क्या करना चाहिए. So I'm for the first time I'm giving this kind of opinion, but objectively we cannot we have to overcome all polarizations. हमें दोनों aspects को समझना है, जैसे कि हम रेस्क्यूअर को समझते हैं, हम सरकार को जिस मामले पर कंडेम करना है, we have as a part of the democratic system.
It's a part of the democratic setup, exactly.
That a part of it. लेकिन सरकार जिन बातों को छुपाती है, जैसे ये बात क्यों छुपाई गई कि मोदी जी ने बहुत कम इसका मतलब पब्लिसिटी दी गई। मोदी जी ने 100 काउस रवांडा को दी, इसका मतलब है उनके पास कॉन्शियसनेस है कि जेनोसाइड क्या है, जेनोसाइड किस तरह की। इन बातों को भी एज जेनोसाइड स्कॉलर्स, एज जेनोसाइड थिंकर्स, हमें ये भी ध्यान में रखना है कि देयर आर रेस्क्यूअर्स अमंग द rescuers among the perpetrators, and they emphasize that the perpetrator has been there. और इसी तरह सरकार अगर एपैथेटिक लगती है, लेकिन क्या वो हर जेनोसाइड विक्टिम के प्रति एपैथेटिक है? अगर वो एपैथेटिक है तो ये जो केरला स्टोरी जैसी फिल्म है और दूसरी कश्मीर फाइल जैसी फिल्म है, इनको प्रमोट करने में क्या उसको फायदा हुआ? यानी कहीं वो इस नैरेटिव से बच नहीं पा रही है। दैट मीन्स ये नैरेटिव एस्टेब्लिश्ड है, क्योंकि सरकार भी कितनी देर तक रियलिटी से भागती है, और ये चीजें एस्टेब्लिश करती हैं कि सरकार के सामने नैरेटिव है एज एंड इट इज अनअवॉइडेबल फॉर द गवर्नमेंट, इट इज अनअवॉइडेबल फॉर एवरीबॉडी, क्योंकि जेनोसाइड हुआ है तो हुआ है। जैसे कि हम आज यहाँ बोल रहे हैं 13 जुलाई को 5th जेनोसाइडल असॉल्ट हुआ है तो हुआ है। इसको मैटियर्स डे बनाने से हम सिर्फ यही कहेंगे कि ये डिनायल ऑफ जेनोसाइड है एंड ग्लोरिफिकेशन ऑफ परपेट्रेटर है।
Absolutely. And like you rightly said, there are rescuers among perpetrators, and then there are collaborators amongst the victim group.
Yes. And so they are collaborators. They are not victims. They are collaborators.
They are the collaborators. Absolutely. And Dilip ji, I have also received a text from Dr. Agnishekar, who was watching all of us three live, and he has just sent a text regarding this 13 July 1931. He says, one of the very significant eyewitness account that is lesser known is of Malka Pukhraj. You know, the Abhi To Main Jawan Hu fame singer. And
I know.
She was also court poet of Maharaja Hari Singh, and she was from Akhnur, and she later went to Pakistan. So he has written that she has described these accounts of 13 July 1931 as spine-chilling. So I just thought that I should read them out. So Dilip ji, I think time we recite Gayatri Mantra and pay tributes to all those victims and survivors of our genocide.
Sure.
Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yo
Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yo Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha Tat Saviturvarenyam
Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yo Prachodayat. नमस्कार.
नमस्कार.
Namaskar.
नमस्कार.